Hello everybody. This week we're going to be doing wireless networking. This is a pretty relevant topic for many reasons. It wasn't always around and it's been used in different ways, and I think most of us probably use it daily as an option of networking. When we really started transmitting things out over the world and things like that, we started with like radio shows, and everything was on the radio during the wars and everything. That's how we transmitted information to the public. And here you would have a radio show where they'd have actors who were acting it out and making sounds, and people, the families gathered around the radio to watch and listen to these shows, and they still do. So then as technology progressed, and TVs became about. Again, the family was wrapped around. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't want to redo this. The family was wrapped around the little bitty TV, and the shows came out, and you were just really happy. And there weren't 500 channels. It was very much more limited. They had, here you have a, I am sorry. Okay. And here you had family around the TV, everybody watching with their little pop and their soda. Midwesterners call it pop. And then here's the TV, and you can see just a glance. It's not really good screen, even though they have these large antennas. So what happened? What type of signals did these receive? They received radio signals and wireless. So it's in the air. These were airwaves. Now here we go. This is a Sony. Oh, this must be top notch. Yeah, it's even a Trinitron. But look at these antennas. And if you look here, we had VHS and UHS. And if you looked at this, there's only 13 channels on here, and you would kind of roll it around trying to get to the right channel to see something. And then on UHF, that was especially interesting because it was very, very spread out. You were lucky if you caught something. So where are we now? Now we have color TVs with antennas, more color TVs. Then we had antennas like this, and these were meant to be on like the house and things, so we'd get a greater reception. Same thing here, but it wasn't always perfect. Antennas have not always been great, but this is also part of why we talk about antennas. There's omnidirectional antennas and many that you will be hearing about. So some of the reception wasn't good. If the antenna wasn't right, then you would look at this. You'd see something where it's kind of choppy, and then somebody would have to yell up to the person at the antenna that, oh, a little to the left, a little to the right, or sometimes we'd get a scattered image like this. We had times when we would have, there we go, this would be like no signal, or we'd have a pixelated signal where we have two images. This is like Mick Jagger and somebody else on here, and that would be because we'd have distortion of the signal. And I like to have fun with this, and this is one of my favorite images because fuzzy reception, mystery solved. Because if the antenna was disrupted at all, the signal was disrupted. So if you look back, there were times, and it could have been you and it could have been your grandparents. Dad would be out on the roof adjusting the antenna. Mom would be out the door yelling up to Dad. The kid is in looking at the TV. Okay, Dad, we need to go a little to the left. So then the kid, Mom goes left, he tries left, and you just keep troubleshooting it until you get a decent signal. You go left, you go right, and you just keep modifying it. It was always about yelling up there. And then as we became more sophisticated, everybody had these, and they were quite big actually. And now you don't see these on TV on houses anymore. And these were called rabbit ears. So you'd have a transmission, you just put this on top of the TV. We are actually becoming where we're putting signals back in the air now, surprisingly. But for people who don't want cable, because these didn't get 500 channels. Okay, so what happened to the antennas? Basically, they received the same kind of thing as the radio did, and they were airwaves. And then these came about, and we start getting even more. We've got Blu-ray and 4K and everything, so it's a big difference. And that was oftentimes because we receive the signals in a different way now, and digital was involved. So that's what I want to say about reception history. And then I want to make sure you understand the wireless spectrum, because this is a question they often ask, and I like this image. I think it's a good image of it. Effectively, the wireless spectrum ranges from 9 kilohertz out to 300 gigahertz. Within that spectrum here's radio navigation for marine and nautical, AM radio, shortwave radio, FM radio. All of these are different frequencies. And then there's television, satellite, more satellite down here, WiMAX, and other satellites. So all of this is the wireless spectrum. I want to say something about this image, and this is a dock basically to charge this wireless phone. And this was a funny little phone because you could have several of them, but also it had a remarkable amount. It has like 11 channels that you could change around, and unfortunately you could be on the same channel with somebody, so you could hear their transmissions when you're on the same channel, and they caused a lot of interference. They also had fluorescent lights on that frequency. They had microwave ovens were on that frequency. There's a lot of things using that 2.4 frequency. So basically that's the older one, and that 2.4 had those 11 channels. If you start talking about what do you do if you have these, you want to spread them out. If you were going to have 3 transmissions, you'd want them to be on 1, 6, and 11, because you want to keep them as far away as possible because they'll interfere with each other. So they're susceptible to interference. That is why when Wi-Fi created their standards, the BAGNAC, they started using 5 gigahertz instead of 2.4 gigahertz. These had more channels, and they also had 20 megahertz wide channels, so they could also do channel bonding. They're also much less interfered with because not that many people were using that band. There's different ones that are coming up, but these are the two that when you look at the Wi-Fi specifications for 802.11, this is really a lot of the reasons why those 2 frequencies were used. Last thing I want to talk about is association. Oh, I'm sorry. I think this one was the one that didn't get corrected. It has misspellings, and I'm not going to restart now. Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, association. What is it? Packet exchange between computer and access point in order to gain internet access. We drive around now, and if we can go to a place like, I want to use my computer for a while, so I go into Starbucks, I buy a coffee, and I get free Wi-Fi. I'm thrilled. McDonald's does it. Hotels do it. And hotels are notorious for using the room number as your password. So most of these are not very secure. Particularly people will sit at airports and do, and outside of Starbucks and all that will do war driving, where they'll listen in, or they'll make a rogue, an evil twin or something, a rogue, and they'll put a rogue access point, so that basically when you log in and you use your wireless, the strongest signal in your area will be listed first, not necessarily yours. And at Starbucks, as an example, if somebody was sitting out in the parking lot and had a great big wire coming off, antenna coming off their car, they could collect information by saying that they could name their access point Starbucks or Starbucky, and you wouldn't even notice it. But they would override, so you'd be logging into their system on an insecure system, and they'd be getting your password and looking around your computer. And that's not such a good thing. But that's how association works. Then, and it's gotten more secure. And we'll talk about access points, but you definitely need to set up an access point to be secure if you want to, or I won't use an access point that's not secure. Okay, so then there's scanning. Surveys around for the access point. What we're trying to do is find it so that we can use it. I want to use the wireless. There's two aspects of this. One of them is active scanning, which transmits a special frame called a probe. And since it's transmitting the frame, it usually will say something like, it's an SSID, service set identifier. And it will say Starbucks, and it will say this is how you can log into us, and we're going to use this password or not a password. So welcome to Starbucks, and then you're in. That could be a probe. That's what they could send out as the invitation to use our system. The other aspect you could have is a passive scanning, where it listens for a special signal. I used to have this animated, but and this is where I just saw this, so I apologize. It says beacon frame. It's actually a beacon frame, where it's the beacon, and I'm sorry, this is an older image, but I wanted to use it. I didn't realize I used one that had errors in it. So, but anyway, the passive scanning just listens for the signal. So let's say that you have, they just, Starbucks listens to the signal. You can get in, you can, and so basically you create an association between the probe and the beacon so that you can talk and use their system. Just, you want to be careful, especially if you look at your wireless and you look down the line of how many APs are attached to you, look for a lock next to them. If they don't have a lock next to them, they're completely open. I even was, well, I'm not going to tell you that story right now. But anyway, I'm sorry it's late, but I wanted to make sure you got some of this information because I do think it's very important. There's one other last thing, and how do we use these transmissions? We use them from our computer, wireless, we use satellites, and we also, if you think about it, we use them in airplanes now, and we also have to use them in boats, because if we didn't have these type of or yachts or whatever, a seaworthy vessel, we'd have a lot of problems with navigation. Now we expect to have GPS in our cars. We expect to have it on our watches. So it's become a critical element.